When the Western Roman Empire fell, there were about 8 different regions, sections, or kingdoms, however you want to talk about them. And this video is going to be about those regions, about those kingdoms, about how they had, what was the relationship between them. Because knowing all of this is important to understand why the Western Roman Empire fell. Many people say that the Western Roman Empire was conquered by barbarians, but nobody goes into detail on how that happened, and this video is going to explore how that happened. And as you are going to see, maybe the conquering is not too much of a conquering, but we'll see that later. This video is not going to go into details why the barbarians did what they did or why the Romans did what they did. That's going to be explored in further videos, but this video is going to be about chronology, when things happen. I'll try not to go off topic, but we'll see how that goes. The Roman Empire fell between the years 470 and 480. Reasonable people might disagree, but at the end it doesn't really matter. The empire became 5 kingdoms, 2 realms, and Italy. Syagrius, a Roman general, controlled one of the realms. Julius Nepos, the second to last emperor, controlled the other realm. Then there were 5 separate kingdoms: the Ostrogoths, the Burgundians, the Vandals, the Visigoths, and the Suevi. And finally, Orestes controlled Italy through his son Romulus Augustulus, who is considered the last Western Roman emperor. To understand why the Roman Empire fell, we need to understand why all of these different kingdoms and realms became independent. It is because they were bloodthirsty? Is it because they only wanted to invade? I want to know who is to blame for the fall of the Roman Empire. For this reason, I took the time to trace the different paths of these nations and the people, so that we can have a better understanding of what was going on. The realm of Julius Nepos. The realm was dominated by Julius Nepos, emperor between the years 474 and 475, and deposed by Orestes, who then named Romulus Augustulus as emperor. Julius Nepos was originally from this area, which in paper was controlled by the Western Roman Empire, but in reality it was controlled by the eastern part of the empire. Julius Nepos was appointed by the Eastern Roman Empire as Western Roman Emperor, and therefore the only people who acknowledged his rule was the East, and some from the West. He gained control of Italy when he beat Glaucurius, who was appointed Roman Emperor by Bundubat, a Teutonic king. Teutonic just means Germanic, but without the modern connotations that the word German has. The realm of Julius Nepos was independent from the rule of Romulus Augustulus because, in his eyes, he was the real emperor. The realm of Syagrius. The realm was dominated by Syagrius, a Roman general, between the years 446 until the fall of the Western Roman Empire and beyond, so he dominated beyond even after the fall. He was ultimately beaten by a Frankish king after the fall of the Western Roman Empire. He did not follow the rule of the last emperor, Romulus Augustulus, since he was just a puppet of his father Orestes. The father was the one who dethroned the previous emperor by force. That dethroned emperor was Julius Nepos. Syagrius did accept Julius Nepos as emperor, since Syagrius did recognize the decisions of the Eastern Roman Empire as valid, and the Eastern Roman Empire appointed Julius Nepos to be the Western Roman Emperor. Syagrius gained the position of general of this area after he conquered it with the aid of Majorian, as the area did not recognize Majorian as emperor at first, but when it finally did, Syagrius ruled the region in the name of Emperor Majorian. After Ricimer killed Majorian, he did not recognize Ricimer's rule in any way. nor any subsequent puppet emperors that Ricimer appointed. In total, Ricimer appointed 3 puppet emperors from the years 461 to 473. All of them were nothing but names, and their names are Livius Severus, Anthemius, and Olivius. The Ostrogothic Kingdom. The Ostrogothic Kingdom comes from the land that Emperor Theodosius I gave to the Goths as a peace settlement in the year 382. The distinctions between the Visigoths and Ostrogoths is not important, and that's a modern convention, and I'm not going to go into too much detail into that. The only thing that we do need to know is that the Goths went to war against Rome in the late 370s. The Romans were unable to conclusively defeat them, but the Goths were not exactly winning either, even if they managed to kill Emperor Valens. Emperor Theodosius I went to war, but when the war went nowhere for anyone, he decided to negotiate with the Goths. An agreement was reached when the Goths were allowed to settle on Roman territory. But it is clear that the agreement was also a compromise from the emperor. Ever since, the Goths had the right to live in these lands, and on paper they were part of the West, but in reality they were heavily influenced by the East. They did recognize the rule of Emperor Julius Nepos, but when he was dethroned, the kingdom became default independent, since there was no Roman ruler who they recognized or swore allegiance to, and therefore they became default independent. Something to have in mind is that even if they were heavily influenced by the Eastern Roman Empire and they did recognize their might, they still were free and independent. The Burgundian Kingdom. This kingdom was settled in Roman land by Emperor Honorius in 411, and they were there ever since until the fall of Rome and beyond. But why were they there? And why did they settle there? Emperor Honorius settled them in Roman territory after an agreement to become foederati, basically being armed forces of the empire. Why was this agreement necessary? Around 409, and after the revolt of Constantius, Jovius revolted against Honorius. Jovius, a Roman general, revolted against Honorius, but he needed help, so he asked the support of the Gallic nobles and some Germanic tribes. These were the Alans and the Burgundians. A question that you might have is, well, how did Honorius manage to make the Burgundians switch side? The answer is, I don't know, and I am not going to go into details in this video. Just know that the Burgundians switched sides from the revolting general Jovius to Honorius' side. What is important to notice is that the Roman general Jovius asked them to come into the empire, and then the Emperor Honorius solved the issue by incorporating them into the empire. And here we can see that one of the reasons the Roman Empire fell lies within the reasons why Jovius revolted, since it was this decision that allowed the Burgundians to settle inside of the Roman Empire. Yes, the Burgundians have some fault for taking advantage of the situations, but if the Roman general didn't allow them to get into the castles, into the forts, if the Roman general didn't allow them to get behind the protective walls of the cities, it is difficult to know if the Burgundians would have been able to conquer the land, or even attempted it. The Vandalic Kingdom. The Vandals conquered the territory after defeating the Roman general Bonifatius in 431. The Roman general Bonifatius first promised them to divide and control Africa between them if they gave him help. Emperor Valentinian III did not like that, so he negotiated with Bonifatius to stop the agreement. The Roman general Bonifatius tried to stop the Vandals, but the Vandals won. But why did Bonifatius wanted help from the Vandals? Well, the senior Magister Militum Praesentalis, Felix, wanted to get rid of Bonifatius. Therefore, he accused him of treason and recalled him in 427. Bonifatius knew that it was a setup, so he didn't go. Felix tried to force him out of Africa with his army, but he failed. Both Felix and Bonifatius were weak from this fight. Felix was ultimately killed by Aetius, the Magister Militum of Gaul. Bonifatius didn't want the same fate as Felix, so he asked help from the Vandals who were in Spain at the time. But why were the Vandals in Spain? The more useful account about them comes from the years 410 or 411, where the Vandals, the Alans, and the Suevi allied with a Roman general Laurentius, who revolted against Honorius and Constantine, after Honorius recognized Constantine III as co-emperor. To make Gerontius' revolt short, Constantine III and Gerontius revolted against Emperor Honorius, but Constantine and Emperor Honorius made a deal, and probably Constantine left Gerontius out in the cold, and that is why he decided to revolt or keep the revolt going. But he didn't have enough manpower, so he asked some Germanic tribe, Teutonic tribes, for help, among which were the Vandals. But the revolt failed, but the Vandals just escaped and stayed in Hispania, just going around. During the 420s, the Vandals just went around from city to city. They captured some, and I'm not going to go into too much detail there. But finally, in the 430s, Bonifatius asked the Vandals for help in his revolt, and they conquered Africa in 431. They remained an independent kingdom by the time that the Western Roman Empire was no more. Here we can see two things going wrong. First, we have the revolt of the Roman general Gerontius, which brings the Vandals into Hispania, and then we have the revolt of the Roman general Bonifatius, which brings the Vandals into Africa. But we must remember that Gerontius' revolt is a consequence of Constantine III's revolt. So here we have four people that we can blame for the fall of Africa. We have Emperor Valentinian, and I will argue that his mother also has some fault. This is Placidia. Placidia was his mother. Gerontius and Bonifatius. The Visigothic kingdom. The Visigoths gained control of Hispania as a reward from Emperor Avidius, since they helped him to gain control of the empire in 455. At first, they wanted to help Emperor Petronius Maximus, but he died before they got to Rome, so they claimed Avidius as emperor. Between the years 455, when they helped Avidius to become emperor, and 430, the Visigoths had control over Spain. Why did the Visigoths have control over Hispania between the years 455 and 430? This is not something that is directly stated in Wikipedia or other places, but they had control over Hispania because of Roman government allowed it. Why did they allow it? During the 420s, the Vandals were all over the province of Hispania. The Visigoths were a way to weaken the control of the Vandals. Once the Vandals left for Africa around the 430s, the Visigoths were the only force in Hispania, with the exception of the Suevi, that controlled the Iberic Peninsula. It was the military usefulness of the Visigoths that allowed them to first be employed by the Romans and later allowed them to stay in the province. The relationship between the Visigoths and Roman rule was complicated. In 426, they are mentioned to be hostiles toward Roman Gaul, but in 451, the Visigoths and the Burgundians are used to help repel Attila. The friendliness of the Visigoths during the 430s can be explained by the fact that they were not fighting the Vandals, since they have left by then. The hostility of the Visigoths during the 420s can be explained by the fact that they were fighting the Vandals, and therefore the pillaging of southern Gaul was due to low supplies and issues that the Visigoths were facing against the Vandals. Once the Vandals left Hispania, the Visigoths didn't need to do any plundering of southern Gaul. Something that is not mentioned is that Gaul and Aquitania are two different places. And Aquitania is between Hispania and Gaul. And Aquitania is where the Visigoths lived. In 418, the Visigoths gained control of southern Gaul, Aquitania, by a treaty with Emperor Honorius. Probably so that they can stop proclaiming senators emperors, because they have done it twice. In 414, it was the first time that they proclaimed Priscus Attalus as emperor, but they failed. But before that, in 410, there are just mentioned that they attacked Rome. These attacks have to do with Stilicho's death. Stilicho was a very important man and very close to the emperor, but I am not going to go into details yet, or at least not in this video. But what we need to see is that this relationship is very important to understand why the Roman Empire fell. Not because the Visigoths killed the empire back then, because the rise in importance and power of the Visigoths is important to understand why the Roman Empire fell. Because if we were speaking about a Roman general, we might be examining the rise of a Roman general in a new dynasty, rather than a new Germanic kingdom. Especially if you know about the history of the Visigoths, more precisely of his king Ataulfus. But I'm not going to go into detail yet. Romulus Augustus in Italy. The last realm there is to speak about is the realm of Romulus Augustulus. It is well known that his name means Little Augustus, and historians love to say that he is the last emperor of Rome. They like it because it is more poetic than anything else. The real power in Italy was his father Orestes. Before Orestes became the father of the emperor, he was the Magister Militum of the emperor Julius Nepos. Orestes dethroned Julius Nepos and then put his own son in the throne. But the only region he controlled was Italy. Julius Nepos was the emperor of the West, proclaimed by the East. He dethroned Glucerius, and Glucerius was the Roman emperor by the power and army of Gundobad. Gundobad proclaimed him emperor after Ricimer's death, who was the power controlling the other emperors. Ricimer gained control of Italy when he killed Emperor Majorian, and then Ricimer proclaimed a bunch of people emperor, which is not really important to know them, or their names are not important. Now, Majorian became emperor when he and Ricimer killed Emperor Avidius, and Avidius was proclaimed emperor by the force and armies of the Visigoths after the death of the Emperor Petronius Maximus. Petronius Maximus gained the title of emperor after Valentinian's III's death. Many believe that he did it, but if he did, then he did a good job of hiding it, because we only have speculations and inferences. His rule was short, lasting no more than 3 months. When we get to Valentinian's III, we finally see the beginning of the end for the empire. At this point in the video, we can see that all of the different territories are going to become independent kingdoms, came from the troubled times of Emperor Honorius and Valentinian between the years 440 and 420. But it is not until the 460s that the fall actually happens. And this is where this video ends.